I want you to imagine a really specific, just incredibly high-stakes scenario.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Right, so picture this. A world-famous, deeply revered, senior Buddhist monk has just flown 15 agonizing hours across the Pacific Ocean.
Oh, wow. That's a long haul.
Yeah, exactly. He's traveling all the way from this tranquil monastery in Thailand to the absolute chaotic, buzzing epicenter of New York City.
Quite the contrast.
Huge contrast. And we are talking about a major global religious summit here, an event with thousands of attendees, international press, and this massive stage just waiting for him. He's the keynote speaker.
So the pressure's really on.
Absolutely. Now, the host of this massive event, out of sheer generosity and, profound respect, wanting to provide the ultimate comfort after such a grueling journey, they have gone all out.
As you would for VIP.
Right. They have booked him a spectacular VIP suite in a gleaming 5-star luxury hotel right in the heart of Manhattan.
Oh.
We're talking panoramic views of the skyline, Egyptian cotton sheets, the works. And here's where the story takes a really bizarre, almost unbelievable turn.
Okay, what happens?
The monk's car pulls up to the grand entrance. He steps out, looks up at the towering glass and steel architecture of the building, and realizes with absolute certainty he cannot check in.
He just refuses.
He absolutely cannot stay there.
It really paints a striking image, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the absolute pinnacle of modern luxury completely rejected.
Right. And it's not just like a polite decline. He is forbidden. Instead of taking the private elevator up to that luxurious suite, he is forced to pack up his meager belongings, turn his back on the 5-star hospitality, and spend the night sleeping on a thin mat in a dusty, drafty warehouse in Queens.
Yeah.
Or, maybe on the cold linoleum floor of a tiny makeshift cultural association office on the outskirts of the city.
That's a massive downgrade.
It is. And if you are the event organizer or just like a lay person watching this unfold, you really have to ask yourself why. Yeah. Why on earth would he do that?
It doesn't make logical sense to a modern observer.
It doesn't. Because simply stepping foot into that luxury hotel room, simply existing in that space for a single night, would instantly and irrevocably violate a sacred, strictly enforced law that is over 2,500 years old.
It is a profound culture clash, isn't it? I mean, it's a head-on collision between modern hospitality, architectural engineering, and ancient, unyielding spiritual discipline.
It really is. And that incredible tension is exactly what we are exploring today. Welcome, everyone, to this deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Our mission today is to completely decode the hidden, almost invisible architectural traps that surround monks every single day of their lives.
And the sources for this are really quite detailed.
Oh, they're amazing. We are drawing from a truly fascinating breakdown provided by the YouTube channel Dhamma9835. They did this incredible, highly granular analysis of the strict Buddhist monastic discipline, which is known as the Vinaya.
The Vinaya, yes. The foundational code.
Exactly. And specifically, we're going to look at how this ancient code deals with the concept of Akochar.
Which essentially translates to inappropriate or forbidden places.
Right. We are going to dig into the rules, the history, and the genuinely shocking ways that the modern buildings you and I walk into every single day secretly function as spiritual minefields.
And, if you are listening to this on your commute, or maybe while you're walking the dog, you might be thinking, well, I am not a monk, and I certainly don't plan on ordaining anytime soon, so why does a 2,500-year-old architectural technicality matter to me?
Exactly. Why should they care?
Well, I promise you, this is not just archaic trivia. This deep dive is fundamentally about how the physical spaces we navigate every single day, our mega malls, our luxury hotels, even our hospitals, secretly act as profound spiritual and psychological boundaries.
It really reframes everything.
It does. Understanding these hidden rules will completely rewire how you view modern architecture. It changes how you understand the concept of personal space and the visible line society draws around morality and purity. It is a lens that makes the familiar, everyday world look entirely alien.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can even begin to understand why that senior monk couldn't sleep in his beautiful Manhattan hotel suite, we really have to map out the broader context.
We have to start with the public spaces first.
Right. We have to look at the invisible borders that are drawn all around our everyday public spaces. And that brings us to this central term, Akochara.
Akochara.
Now, I have to admit, when I first heard the word Akochara, it sounded incredibly archaic to me.
How so?
It just sounds like a concept pulled straight out of like a historical fantasy novel. In the traditional ancient texts, the word brings up these very specific old world images.
Like what kind of images?
Rules stating that monks are strictly forbidden from wandering into taverns or lurking around red light districts or mingling inappropriately with widows and spinsters.
Right. Very classical temptations.
Yeah, it paints a picture of a very obvious, highly theatrical kind of temptation.
That is the traditional imagery, yes. The literal translation of Akochar leans toward a place where one should not go, or, perhaps more accurately, an unresort, a
Yeah.
place that explicitly does not support the ascetic life.
An unresort. I like that.
But what the analysis from Dhamma 9835 highlights so brilliantly is that this concept is not frozen in amber.
Right. It's not just ancient history.
Exactly. It is not just a historical artifact. The Thai Supreme Sangha Council, which is essentially the supreme governing body of the monastic order, known as the Mahathera Samagama, has explicitly and formally updated the definition of Akochar for the modern era.
And what did they add? Because this blew my mind.
They looked at our 21st century landscape,
Yeah.
evaluated the threats to spiritual discipline, and declared that Akochar now includes modern shopping malls,
Wow.
entertainment venues, nightlife spots, and even just taking a casual, relaxed stroll through a bustling night market.
Which is absolutely wild to think about. A shopping mall.
I know, it seems so harmless.
To most of us, a mall is the most mundane, sanitized, everyday environment imaginable. It is the ultimate neutral zone.
Just commerce.
Right. It's where you go to buy a pair of socks, grab a soft pretzel, or just get out of the summer heat. But to the monastic code, stepping through the doors of a mall is like stepping into a classified, high-alert danger zone.
It really is.
So why is a place that sells, scented candles and sneakers considered a spiritual hazard?
To understand the why, we really have to look closely at the psychological mechanics of Buddhism,
Right.
specifically a foundational concept called Kamagun 5.
Kamagun 5. Break that down for us. What is that?
These are the 5 sensual pleasures. In the Buddhist framework, they correspond directly to our physical senses form or sight, sound, smell, taste, and physical touch.
Okay, the basic 5 senses.
Right. And these 5 senses are identified as the primary vectors,
Yeah.
the main highways, for earthly desire and attachment to enter the mind.
So they are the vulnerabilities.
Precisely. Now, I want you to look at a modern shopping mall through that specific lens. Malls are not accidental spaces. They are not just buildings with shops thrown into them.
No, they're incredibly calculated.
They are quite literally meticulously engineered by armies of architects, retail psychologists, and corporate marketers to trigger those exact 5 sensual pleasures simultaneously.
Oh, wow. When you frame it like that, it's entirely true. It is sensory manipulation on an industrial scale.
Exactly. Let's walk through it. Think about sight.
Okay.
They manipulate the lighting using bright, warm spotlights to make products look irresistible and essential.
True, the lighting in those places is always perfect.
And think about sound. They pump highly specific, focus-tested music through hidden speakers. A tempo designed to affect your mood, slow down your walking pace, and make you linger near storefronts.
Oh man, the mall music, it totally gets you into a trance.
Then think about smell. This is a huge one. They deliberately vent the smell of freshly baked cinnamon rolls, or roasted coffee, or high-end perfume right into the main walkways to trigger deep, primal cravings.
That cinnamon smell gets me every time. It's weaponized.
It really is. They offer free food samples to trigger taste. Everything from the clothing to the leather seats in the lounge areas is deeply tactile, triggering touch.
So it's hitting every single highway of desire all at once.
Right. A mall is a highly efficient machine designed to cultivate desire. It is built to make you want things you didn't even know existed 5 minutes ago.
While preparing for this deep dive, I came across this brilliant analogy summarizing this exact point, and I just cannot get it out of my head.
What was it?
It suggested that for a monk, a person whose entire life's purpose, whose minute-to-minute practice is about extinguishing earthly desire and cultivating perfect detachment, walking into a modern shopping mall is like walking into a literal minefield without any protective armor.
That is a perfect description.
Right. Every single step, every glance at a window display is a potential explosion of sensory temptation. It is an environment actively, aggressively fighting against their core life mission.
It is a deeply hostile environment to the ascetic mind.
Yeah.
The architecture itself is the antagonist.
I was thinking about this, and another analogy came to me. Tell me if this tracks.
Let's hear it.
It feels almost like the concept of diplomatic immunity, but like inverted.
Okay, inverted how?
Think about it. The moment a monk steps through those automatic sliding glass doors of a mega mall, it is like crossing a national border. The mall is the sovereign, undisputed territory of the secular worldly realm.
which the ancient texts call the Lakia.
Right, the Lakia. The absolute moment a monk crosses that threshold, their diplomatic immunity, their sacred, separated status from the chaos of the material world, is actively challenged by the environment itself. They have left the sanctuary and entered foreign, hostile territory.
That is a very sharp way to look at it, and it leads perfectly into the second, perhaps even more dangerous layer of Akochara.
There's a second layer.
Oh, yes. Because the threat isn't just internal. It is not just about the monk internally fighting off the urge to buy a new smartphone or enjoying the ambient smell of a bakery.
Right, the internal struggle.
The real systemic danger, the threat that could actually damage the religion itself, is a sociological concept called lokavaja.
Lokavaja. Okay, we have the internal threat of the senses. What is this external threat? What does lokavaja mean in this context?
Lokavaja translates roughly to worldly censure or the criticism of society. The danger is society watching.
Ah, the public eye.
Exactly. Think deeply about the visual contrast. When a lay person, an everyday shopper, sees a monk, a figure clad in ochre robes that symbolize the ultimate renunciation of the material world, strolling past luxury handbag storefronts,
Bathed in neon light.
bathed in neon light while pop music plays in the background, it creates a massive, jarring cognitive dissonance.
It just looks wrong.
The public inevitably begins to question the monk's presence. They whisper, they take photos, they judge. And that societal judgment, that loss of public faith, is considered the first domino to fall in the destruction of the religion itself.
So it's about optics.
It is entirely about optics and institutional survival. The monastic institution relies completely on the alms, the support, and the reverence of the public.
Because they don't have, like, regular jobs, they rely on the community for food and shelter.
Exactly.
Eh.
So if the public sees monks indulging, or even just appearing to indulge, in the epicenter of modern consumerism, that reverence evaporates.
The trust is broken.
The boundary of Akochara isn't just keeping the worldly desires out of the monk's head. It's keeping the monk out of the worldly spotlight to protect the integrity of the entire institution.
Okay, that makes perfect logical sense for a public, chaotic space, like a mall or a night market. You want to avoid sensory overload, and you want to avoid giving the public a reason to gossip.
Right.
But this is where the architectural rules take a massive, almost incomprehensible left turn.
This is the really fascinating part.
Because if public spaces are dangerous due to the crowds and the sensory bombardment, you would naturally think a locked, private, quiet hotel room is perfectly safe.
It seems like the ideal retreat.
But it isn't. This brings us to the actual architecture of sin. We are moving from the psychology of public space into the strict, unforgiving legalities of private architecture.
And this is exactly where the rules transition from being intuitive to being astonishingly literal and structurally specific.
I really have to push back on this rule just as a modern person trying to make sense of the engineering.
Sure.
Because when I think of a modern hotel, I think of total isolation. A modern hotel, especially in a city like New York, is basically a luxury bunker.
It is very secure.
It has thick, fire-rated concrete walls. It has heady security doors. It has completely separate floors that require different encrypted key cards just to access the elevator.
Right, the physical separation is intense.
If a monk is staying in room 501 and a laywoman is staying in room 502, they are completely physically and visually separated. They cannot see each other. They cannot hear each other. They might as well be in different time zones.
To our modern minds, yes.
To an engineer, to an architect, that is total, verifiable, scientific isolation. How can that possibly be considered a violation of monastic purity?
To understand why the modern engineer's perspective is completely irrelevant here, we have to look at the ancient monastic codes, specifically the statutes known as Pasitya 5 and Pasitya 6.
Okay, let's look at the absolute letter of the law. What does it say?
These are the highly specific legal rules governing the act of sleeping or lying down in the same space as an unordained person.
And how does it define that?
Well, the law makes a very sharp, uncompromising distinction based on gender.
Okay.
For unordained men, say a male novice monk, or a layman who is acting as a driver or helper for the monk, there is a tiny, temporary, pragmatic loophole. A monk can share a sleeping space with an unordained man for a maximum of 3 nights.
So just enough time to transit somewhere.
Exactly. It is an allowance built for the realities of travel. But for women, who are referred to in the ancient texts as matugama, the rule is absolute.
How absolute?
It is a brick wall, 0 nights. Not even one single night is permitted under any circumstances.
0 nights. No exceptions. But again, I come back to the definition of sharing a space. Room 501 and room 502 are emphatically not the same space. There are different boxes of air separated by concrete.
And here is where we find the hidden architectural trap. You have to ask, what is the legal definition of sleeping together or sharing a space in a 2,500-year-old legal code?
Okay, what is the definition?
The historical analysis details the exact phrasing from the original text, which in Thai is often summarized as Mung Tang Mod, Bang Tang Mod.
Mung Tang Mod, Bang Tang Mod. And what does that translate to?
It translates roughly to completely roofed, completely enclosed.
Completely ripped.
Yes. The monastic law defines cohabitation, not by the interior walls, not by the locked wooden doors, not by the distance between the beds, but by being under the same continuous roof structure.
This completely blew my mind when I realized the implications.
It really changes everything.
So essentially, the roof of a 50-story modern hotel acts like a giant invisible energy dome.
That's a great way to visualize it.
It completely nullifies everything beneath it. It does not matter if there are 1,000,000 tons of concrete separating the monk in the penthouse and the laywoman on the ground floor.
It doesn't matter at all.
It doesn't matter if there are 20 floors and a dozen security checkpoints requiring biometric scans separating them. If the roof physically connects the building and a monk and a woman are anywhere under that same contiguous architectural canopy, the monk commits an offense the moment he goes to sleep.
It is instantaneous.
It's just instant.
What's fascinating here is how this ancient rule completely bypasses our modern reliance on physical barriers. Today, we trust concrete.
Yeah.
We trust deadbolts. We trust the privacy of a hotel room.
We think of privacy as visual and auditory.
Exactly. But the Vinaya ignores all of that modern engineering to create a purely symbolic, almost karmic boundary based entirely on the architectural blueprint of the roof.
It's wild.
It's a spatial definition that transcends modern building materials. The shared roof is the ultimate non-negotiable disqualifier.
It's like the roof is a giant circuit board, and the mere physical presence of the two individuals inside the structure completes a forbidden circuit, regardless of how many concrete resistors you put between them.
The circuit is complete. That's a very apt metaphor.
But I have to ask why. This seems so technically pedantic. It feels like a massive loophole that works against the monks.
It does seem incredibly strict for no obvious physical reason.
Right. To understand why a thick concrete wall isn't enough to satisfy the same roof rule, we have to travel back in time. We have to go back 2.5 millennia to the specific historical legal precedent that forced the Buddha to invent this exact rule in the first place.
Yes. The origin story of this specific Pasitya rule is incredibly revealing, and it answers your question about why the rule is so seemingly pedantic.
Who is it about?
It centers around a very famous, highly respected figure in early Buddhist history, Venerable Anuruddha.
Set the scene for us. Paint the picture of what happened.
We have to imagine the realities of ancient travel in India. It was grueling, it was slow, and it was dangerous. Venerable Anuruddha was traveling on foot across the country.
Just walking miles and miles.
Yes. And as the sun began to set, he needed safe shelter for the night, so he stopped in a local roadside inn. Now, this particular inn happened to be owned and operated by a woman.
Okay, a female innkeeper.
Right. And according to the historical accounts, when she saw Anuruddha, she became completely overwhelmingly overcome by infatuation with him.
Oh boy.
She didn't just passively admire him from across the room, she actively, persistently, and overtly tried to seduce him inside the inn.
Okay, but hold on. I want to interrupt with a crucial point here, because anyone familiar with the texts knows exactly who Anuruddha is.
He wasn't just any monk.
Exactly. The texts are very clear about his spiritual status. He was an arahant.
Correct. A fully enlightened being.
Right. He had entirely, permanently eradicated all ignorance, all lust, all earthly desire. He couldn't possibly be tempted by her.
It is psychologically and spiritually impossible for an arahant to break his vows in that way.
And in fact, the story tells us that he didn't succumb. He didn't even flee in panic. He calmly sat her down right there in the inn, and he preached the Dhamma, the core teachings of the Buddha, to her.
He turned it into a teaching moment.
He spoke with such clarity and truth that he completely changed her mind, and she ended up abandoning her infatuation and converting to Buddhism.
An incredible turnaround.
Right. Now, when I read this, I thought, this is a massive PR win.
It really sounds like one.
A potential scandal was completely averted. An enlightened being proved his absolute unshakable purity under pressure, and a lost soul was successfully converted to the faith. It sounds like a wildly successful outcome. Why wouldn't this be celebrated?
It certainly reads like a triumph of spiritual power over worldly temptation. You would expect a Medal of Honor. But hear the historical twist.
What happened?
When the Buddha heard about this incident from the other monks, he did not praise Anuruddha. He didn't celebrate the successful conversion of the innkeeper.
He didn't.
Instead, he severely rebuked him. He reprimanded a fully enlightened being in front of the entire assembly, and in that very moment, as a direct reaction to this event, he established the absolute, unbreakable ban on a monk ever sharing a roof with a woman again.
Which feels so deeply counterintuitive. Why punish the guy who literally proved that the system of enlightenment works perfectly?
Because to understand the Buddha's verdict, we have to return to that concept we discussed earlier, lokavaja.
The public censure.
The danger of societal censure, yes. Think deeply about the physical reality of that roadside inn. The walls of the inn were closed. It was a private enclosed space.
Right.
The villagers, the regular people walking around outside in the dirt streets of the town, couldn't see what was happening inside.
Right, there were no glass windows. It was a closed structure.
Exactly. And those villagers walking by had absolutely no idea that Anuruddha was a fully enlightened arahant.
They didn't know his resume.
Right. He didn't have a glowing, visible halo over his head that broadcasted his internal purity to the world. To the average villager on the street, he is just a man. A man who went alone behind closed doors to spend the night under the same roof with a woman who is known to run an inn.
Oh, I see the trap.
The Buddha's ruling recognized a harsh, undeniable truth about human society. The rule had to be created to prevent the mere assumption of impropriety.
The assumption is enough to cause damage.
Exactly. Amongst internal pure intentions, even the literal flawless perfection of an arahant cannot act as a shield against society's gossip. And that resulting gossip, the whispers that would inevitably spread through the village market the next morning. Did you see the monk staying at the innkeeper's house? That leads directly, unavoidably to lokavaja, the loss of public faith in the entire monastic order. Therefore, the physical architectural rule must be absolute. It must cut off the very possibility of the rumor at its physical source.
It's the ultimate zero-trust policy. The Buddha is essentially saying, your enlightenment is great for you, Anuruddha, and I'm glad you didn't sin, but your personal purity does not protect the institution from bad PR.
Perfectly stated.
The architecture of the inn provided the fuel for gossip, regardless of what actually happened inside. And if we bring that logic back to the modern five-star hotel scenario from the beginning of the show, it makes perfect sense.
It maps on perfectly.
Hotels, by their very nature, are designed for worldly pleasure, for luxury consumption, for romantic vacations, and yes, for intimacy. They are the modern equivalents of that ancient roadside inn, but scaled up to industrial proportions.
Precisely. Placing a monk, who again is the living, breathing symbol of absolute asceticism and renunciation, inside the epicenter of worldly indulgence creates a toxic, symbolic ambiguity.
Even if he's just reading?
Even if he is locked in room 501, sitting perfectly still, reading scriptures all night, the fact that he is under the umbrella of a building fundamentally designed for indulgence compromises the visual purity of the monastic institution.
The architecture is guilty by association.
The architecture itself is contaminated with worldly intent. The shared roof makes him a participant in the space, legally speaking.
Okay, so the rules are meticulously designed to protect the religion's image from the cynical, judging gaze of society. But this brings us to an incredible modern dilemma.
The clash with modern logistics.
Right. What happens when strictly adhering to this ancient rule actually hurts the religion's ability to survive or to spread its message in the modern globalized world? Let's circle all the way back to the New York scenario we opened with.
This is where we see the intense friction between corporate efficiency and ancient doctrine.
Exactly. Let's paint the reality of the logistics. You have this highly revered monk. He is invited by devoted disciples to preach in a major Western city. Could be New York, London, Paris.
A huge opportunity.
Massive. Now, in this specific city, there are no local Thai temples. There are no dedicated monastic facilities with the correct architectural layout.
They don't have the infrastructure.
The disciples desperately try to rent a completely segregated house, but on short notice, with the intense security requirements needed for a figure of his stature, it's impossible. The only structurally sound, highly secure, logistically appropriate place to host a VIP of this caliber is a massive five-star hotel.
A building that, by definition, will inevitably have female guests staying under its massive, contiguous roof.
Right. Now, in literally any modern corporate mindset, any administrative or bureaucratic system in the world, you would look at the situation and say, okay, we apply for a waiver.
You'd escalate it.
You'd appeal to the higher-ups in the Sangha Council. You'd say, look, we are about to miss out on spreading our message to 1,000 eager people. We have international press waiting. We are missing a massive opportunity for global outreach just because we can't find a building with the exact right style of segregated roofing. Isn't that letting absurd architectural technicalities ruin the greater good?
It seems counterproductive.
I mean, as an outsider, it feels utterly crazy to cancel a global summit over the blueprint of a roof.
It absolutely feels crazy to the modern, results-oriented, metric-driven mind. But the monastic perspective delivers a very heavy, unyielding truth that we have to grapple with.
What's the verdict?
There is zero room for negotiation. There are no executive exemptions. There are no emergency waivers for VIPs.
Not at all.
None. If the disciples cannot find a legally appropriate roof, like a standalone cultural association office, or a private home that is completely and demonstrably segregated from women for the duration of the stay, the official ruling is remarkably blunt. The monk simply does not go.
He just stays home. The keynote speech is scrapped. The event is canceled. Millions of dollars in planning, gone.
Yes. The flight is canceled, the summit goes on without him, or it falls apart. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it reveals the fundamental philosophical difference between Theravada Buddhism and modern corporate growth strategies.
How so?
In this tradition, the rules aren't an annoying obstacle blocking the core mission of the religion. The rules are the core. The discipline is the foundation holding the entire religion up.
That is a massive paradigm shift for a Western listener.
It takes some getting used to.
We usually think of rules, especially religious or legal rules, as the red tape you occasionally have to cut through to do the real work of helping people or spreading a message. But here, the red tape is the real work. Maintaining the boundary is the spiritual practice.
Exactly. Purity of discipline is valued infinitely more than the modern metric of how many people did you preach to today or how many followers did you gain.
It's quality over quantity on an extreme level.
Think deeply about the underlying logic. If a monk breaks the foundational rules of purity by compromising and staying in a luxury hotel with women under the same roof, just so he can travel comfortably to a stage to teach other people about the vital importance of purity,
The hypocrisy ruins it.
the teachings become entirely hollow. The hypocrisy instantly destroys the message before he even opens his mouth.
Wow. So the act of staying home, the act of turning down the glamorous New York summit, the act of rejecting the fame and the audience to protect the integrity of the Vinaya is actually a vastly more powerful sermon than anything he could have possibly said on that stage.
Precisely. It is a living, breathing demonstration of the Dhamma. It sends a message that echoes far louder than a keynote speech. It says, the integrity of the practice is worth more than global acclaim. The rule matters more than the reputation.
I love that. I deeply respect the uncompromising nature of it, but I am going to push this to the absolute limit.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because it is one thing to skip a conference or a TED Talk or a speaking tour to uphold a rule. What happens when the stakes are raised? What happens when life and death are on the line?
An ultimate test.
How does the same roof rule apply when we introduce the messy, chaotic reality of the modern medical system? Let's talk about the hospital dilemma.
This is where the friction between the ancient law and modern reality becomes truly life-threatening. This is where the rubber meets the road.
Let's ramp up the tension. A senior monk suffers a massive medical emergency. Let's say it's a severe heart attack or a stroke or a catastrophic car accident.
A dire situation.
He is rushed by ambulance, sirens blaring, to the nearest major metropolitan hospital. He is admitted immediately to the ICU or a general critical care ward. Now, a modern hospital is one massive, sprawling, interconnected complex.
Under one roof.
It is entirely, undeniably, under one continuous, enormous roof.
Yeah.
And in a general ward or an ICU, you do not control who is in the bed next to you.
You do not. It is a mixed-gender environment by absolute medical necessity.
So here's my extreme pushback. I refuse to believe there isn't a workaround here. Surely, medical necessity suspends the rules, right?
You would think so.
Triage supersedes ancient law. Every major religion has a clause for preserving life. What if the monk is completely unconscious? He's under heavy anesthesia, he's intubated on a ventilator, entirely unaware of his
The
surroundings.
extreme edge case.
Right. If there is a female patient in the bed opposite him, or even a male patient next to him whose wife is sleeping on a cot on the floor overnight to keep watch, does the monk, who is literally fighting for his life in a coma, break his sacred vows just by being in the room?
It is a shocking reality to confront, and it challenges our deepest secular instincts about compassion and medical care. But the traditional interpretations are unequivocal. The rule is never suspended.
Wait, really? Never.
Yes. Even unconscious, even in a medically induced coma on a ventilator, sharing that massive hospital roof with a female patient or a female visitor overnight constitutes an offense. The monk, despite his complete lack of physical awareness, his total lack of intention, falls into a state of transgression.
That is breathtakingly strict. It feels almost cruel from a secular standpoint. He's in a coma. He has no agency.
It's hard to reconcile with modern medical ethics.
You're telling me a religion built on profound compassion would rather condemn a man's spiritual purity than have him share a giant building with a woman while he bleeds out? How is that logically justifiable?
It highlights how objective and structural the rule is. It isn't just about the monk's conscious lust or personal agency. It's about the physical reality of the space and the preservation of the monastic boundary against all odds.
It goes back to Anuruddha.
Remember the lesson of Anuruddha? Yes. The rule doesn't care about the monk's internal state. It cares about the architectural fact.
But wait, if that's the absolute reality, how do monks ever receive medical care? Do they just refuse to go to the hospital and choose to pass away in the forest rather than break the rule?
No. The monastic system and the healthcare system have had to adapt to each other architecturally. This is the exact reason why monastic wards exist in large Thai hospitals.
I've seen signs for those when traveling, and I always wondered. I honestly assumed it was a VIP thing.
That's what most people think.
Like a first-class lounge for religious figures, funded by wealthy donors to give them better food and nicer beds.
That is a very common, very pervasive layperson misconception. They aren't VIP status, and they aren't about class segregation or luxury.
Then what are they?
They are strict architectural necessities built specifically to protect the Vinaya in a life-or-death environment. It introduces a vital concept that is crucial to understand here, called sapaya.
Sapaya. Let's define that for the listener.
Sapaya translates to a suitable, supportive, and agreeable environment. In the context of medical healing, it recognizes that for a monk, recovery isn't just about soft beds, strong antibiotics, and IV drips.
Healing is mental as well as physical.
Healing is deeply psychosomatic. If a conscious monk is lying in a general ward, surrounded by female patients and female nurses, terrified every single second that his life's vows, the absolute core of his identity, the thing he has dedicated decades to upholding, are being broken by his mere presence in that environment, his spiritual distress will be immense.
Oh, absolutely.
And that severe spiritual anxiety, that constant low-level panic, will actively hinder his physical healing.
That makes total sense. His stress levels would be off the charts. His cortisol would be pumping. His blood pressure would spike just from the guilt of the architecture surrounding him.
Exactly.
His body couldn't rest because his mind is in a state of spiritual emergency.
Exactly. A monastic ward provides spiritual safety alongside medical care. It is a sealed, structurally compliant zone, often with completely separate entrances and segregated facilities, where the monk can actually relax enough to let the medicine work. It removes the architectural sin from the equation of his recovery.
But even in a dedicated, segregated monastic ward, you still need doctors and nurses. The medicine doesn't administer itself.
Sure.
And this leads to some fascinating, highly strict medical protocols that I was reading about. How does a hospital staff a ward where women technically aren't allowed to cohabit or interact in a secluded space?
The protocols are incredibly meticulous and demand immense coordination. First, male nurses, male doctors, or male medical volunteers are strictly preferred and requested to staff these wards whenever humanly possible.
But statistically, let's be real, the vast majority of nursing staff globally, and especially in Thailand, are women.
It's a huge logistical hurdle.
What happens in a code blue emergency at 3:00 a.m. when only a female nurse is on duty, the male orderly is on another floor, and the monk needs immediate life-saving intervention?
The care is absolutely given. They do not let the monk die. But it is given with intense ritual and physical boundaries in place.
Like what kind of boundaries?
If a female nurse must perform an emergency procedure, say starting an IV line, administering CPR, or even just checking a pulse and vitals, she must use physical barriers. She cannot have direct skin-to-skin contact with the monk.
Wow.
She must use medical gloves or place a clean cloth between her hand and the monk's skin.
A literal physical manifestation of the boundary. The glove acts as a microwall.
Yes, but crucially, it's not just about the tactile boundary of touch. To satisfy the rule against being alone with a woman in a secluded space, and to prevent our old enemy Lokavaja's societal gossip and assumption, a third-party male must always be present in the room as a witness.
Always, even at 3 a.m.
Always. A male orderly, a male relative who is visiting, a hospital security guard, someone male, must be pulled into the room to visibly ensure the propriety of the interaction, even during an emergency.
The logistics of this are staggering. I want you to really picture this. The amount of coordination, the frantic search for a male security guard at 3 a.m., the application of barriers, all required just to check a pulse without causing a massive spiritual crisis for the patient.
It is an incredible dance of compliance and care.
It really highlights how these rules dictate literally every aspect of existence. They dictate where monks can walk, where they can sleep, and exactly how they are allowed to heal from a heart attack.
It touches everything.
But unpacking all of this raises a massive question about responsibility. Who is actually responsible for enforcing these architectural boundaries? Because the monk is just one person. He doesn't build the hospitals, he doesn't design the malls, and he doesn't book his own travel.
That is the ultimate realization of this deep dive. When you peel back all the layers of history and architecture, the responsibility ultimately falls on the listener.
Wait, on us, on the lay people listening to this right now.
Yes. We, the lay people, the secular society, the well-meaning event organizers in New York, the hospital administrators trying to provide good care, we are the crucial active puzzle piece in this 2,500-year-old system.
Because we are the ones shaping the world they walk into.
The monks rely entirely on us to build and maintain the boundaries that keep them pure.
I see exactly where you're going with this. It's about awareness.
It points out a deeply tragic irony. When well-meaning, generous people, out of sheer ignorance of these ancient, complex laws book, a five-star hotel for a visiting monk because they want to show him the highest possible respect, they think they're doing a wonderful, merit-making good deed.
They think they're providing the best possible hospitality.
When a hospital administrator upgrades a monk to a comfortable, mixed-gender VIP suite for convenience, they think they're providing elite care. But in reality, through their lack of understanding, they are unintentionally committing a kind of spiritual violence.
Spiritual violence, that's a very strong phrase, but given everything we've discussed about the monk's internal panic and the threat to his vows, it's incredibly accurate.
They are forcibly placing the monk into a state of sin. They are physically creating the very architectural traps we've been discussing, trapping the monk in an impossible dilemma between offending his generous, well-meaning hosts by refusing the room and breaking his sacred lifelong vows by accepting it.
So what does this all mean for us? It means that understanding the dimensions of architecture and monastic law isn't just an exercise in interesting trivia for anthropology nerds.
It has real-world stakes.
It is an active ethical requirement for anyone who interacts with this culture. If you want to support and protect the institution of the monkhood without accidentally destroying it from the inside out, you have to understand the invisible geometry of their world. You have to know the rules of the house if you're going to invite them over.
Exactly. Ignorance of the architecture is a threat to the religion. But the analysis we've been following ends with a final, highly philosophical question that I think we need to spend some time addressing because it completely turns the entire premise of our conversation on its head.
I love a good paradox. Let's hear it.
We spent this entire time establishing that these strict architectural boundaries, the separate roofs, the avoidance of hotels, the physical barriers in the ICU, were fundamentally built to prevent Lokavaja.
The societal gossip.
They exist, as established by the story of Anuruddha, to prevent societal gossip, suspicion, and the resulting loss of public faith. But the question is, what if society changes?
Meaning what exactly? What kind of change?
What if, in 50 or 100 years, secular society simply doesn't care anymore? We're living in an increasingly globalized, secularized world.
That's true.
What if the public becomes so completely modernized that seeing a monk checking into a Marriott hotel in Manhattan or walking past a Cinnabon in a mega mall doesn't trigger any gossip at all? What if people just look at it and say, oh, he's traveling, he needs a place to sleep, and they move on with their day? The judgment vanishes. If the threat of societal censure completely vanishes, if the public stops judging, do the concrete walls and the ancient definition of a roof still hold any actual spiritual weight? Or is the purity of the monk entirely dependent on the gaze of the society watching him?
Oh, that is a brilliant, devastating paradox. It's like a spiritual version of the old philosophical riddle. If a tree falls in the forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound?
Exactly.
If a monk stays in a hotel and society doesn't gossip, is it still a sin? It asks whether the rule is an objective, universal law of karma, like gravity, or if it is just a temporary social contract that naturally expires when the culture moves on.
It challenges the very foundation of the Vinaya in the modern world. Are these meticulous rules actively protecting the monk's immortal soul from corruption? Or are they just an elaborate PR strategy to protect the monastery's reputation in an ancient, judgmental society?
If it's just PR, then the rules should evolve. But if it's about the soul, the rules must remain, even if society thinks they are crazy. I could debate that for another hour.
It is a profound question.
It is a heavy, heavy concept to sit with. But looking at the time, let's try to summarize the incredible journey we've been on today, because we have covered some serious ground.
We really have.
We started with the concept of Akochar, uncovering the sensory traps of modern shopping malls, how the meticulously designed lighting, the curated music, and the pumped-in smells act as a psychological minefield against the ascetic mind.
From there, we move from public chaos into private isolation, discovering the invisible energy domes created by hotel roofs. We learned how the legal definition of sharing a space under a continuous ceiling completely negates millions of tons of concrete and high-tech security doors.
We examine the historical precedent of Venerable Anuruddha at the roadside inn, learning that even the flawless internal purity of an enlightened mind cannot override the danger of societal assumption and gossip. We saw how the rule was born to protect the institution, not just the individual.
And we face the ultimate high-stakes environment of the hospital ICU, realizing that the rules of spiritual purity do not bend, not even for a patient on life support, requiring the literal architectural invention of monastic wards and complex medical protocols, just to allow monks to heal without breaking their vows.
We've seen how architecture, something we usually think of as just inert steel, glass, and concrete, is actively used as a literal tool to define, defend, and sometimes threaten spiritual purity.
It truly reveals a world where every doorway you walk through, every ceiling you sleep under, and every sliding glass door you pass carries profound ancient karmic weight.
It really does. It changes how you look at a building. But before we go, I want to leave you, the listener, with a brand new, highly provocative thought. Something for you to chew on that builds on everything we've talked about today, but pushes it into the future.
A modern extrapolation of the ancient law?
Exactly. We spent this entire deep dive talking about physical architecture. We've talked about ancient timber roofs in India, fire-rated concrete walls in Manhattan, sliding automatic doors in malls, and physical cloth barriers in
The
hospitals.
physical world.
But what happens when the architecture isn't physical anymore?
What do you mean by that?
Think about the digital spaces we inhabit today, right now. If a monk and a laywoman log into the exact same private, password-protected Zoom room, are they secluded together?
Oh, wow.
They are sharing a designated enclosed digital space. What if they both put on VR headsets, log into the metaverse, and their avatars occupy the exact same private virtual room? They can see each other, they can hear each other, they are interacting in a closed environment. Are they under the same roof?
That is fascinating.
Does a 2,500-year-old law written about timber, clay, and physical proximity apply to the server farms, the fiber optic cables, and the digital architecture of the internet? When the walls isolating you are made of code instead of concrete, how do you measure the boundaries of spiritual purity?
That is the ultimate new frontier for the Sangha Council. If a physical roof creates an invisible karmic dome, what kind of spiritual dome does a server farm in California create? Can an avatar commit an architectural sin? It forces us to ask what space even means to the human soul in the 21st century.
Exactly. It's a question that the ancient texts could never have anticipated, but one that the modern world demands an answer to. Something for you to mull over the next time you log into a virtual meeting or put on a headset. We want to thank you for joining us on this incredible exploration of architecture, ancient law, and the invisible lines that shape our world. Thank you for listening, thank you for learning with us, and as always, stay curious.